Hello, everyone. Welcome to our special Tuesday meditation Dharma talk with Venerable De Hong. I believe I got all my platform working, especially with Insight Timer. Uh, and so I'm going to quickly turn the podium over to Venerable De Hong and perhaps let him introduce himself for those of you who is meeting him for the first time. And or maybe I should do the introduction. What do you think? Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm a much better salesman than you are.
Go ahead.
Well, Venerable De Hong actually, he is of Chinese ancestry, but he was born in Vietnam, and he came to United States when he was 19 years old to actually escape a war. It was the war between the Vietnamese and the Chinese, not the one between the Vietnamese and Americans. By that time, the Americans had already completely withdrawn from Vietnam, and so being a person of Chinese ancestor, and then potentially get drafted and and fight.
Almost.
So his parents decided that it would be best if he would escape that possibility. So he actually escaped on a boat. Like many of you might have imagined what boat people are like. So he was one of those. To make the long story short, he escaped death. It was a close call. It was 7 days on a boat with a couple hundred people, no water.
Yeah.
And he eventually came to the United States just very quickly, and then came to Cleveland, Ohio, where he started his education, got his bachelor's degree, and then his master's degree in engineering. And then actually was started to work in the field, in his own field. And then since he has so much spare time, besides working in the restaurant, doing dishwashing, and then another job, I think you were holding two jobs, right?
Two part-time
Two
jobs and one
two
full-time job.
part-time job, one full-time job. He decided that since he has so much time left, he got his MBA,
Yeah.
MBA, and then eventually he was able to sponsor his parents and his siblings. There are seven of them, right?
Five more. Yeah, I came with my
Five
younger
more. You
brother.
came with younger brother, so there were
Mm.
two of you already here, and then you work with. You apply. You became a naturalized citizen, and once you're a citizen, it was your right to be united with your family.
Yeah.
And maybe just a side note, most people, these days talk a lot about immigrants. So first of all, immigrants has to be legal. If you're not legal, there's no reason to call you immigrant. We used to be called as people would say non-documented. That's all BS. Okay, back in the
Mm.
days, we all came here legally, and therefore we are able to call ourselves immigrant. If you're not here legally, then you are a illegal alien. Okay, so his family came not because they had right to be here, but because Venerable De Hong, being an American citizen, have the right to be united with his family. So anyway, later on, he became a monk, and then he went back to school and got another master's degree and a PhD in Buddhist psychology, right?
No, in Chinese Buddhism.
In Chinese Buddhism. Okay, all right, all right. And then for the last, 15 years?
13 years. Hmm.
13 years he's been working full time with no pay as as someone who would bring Buddhist teaching and into the prison for those who are incarcerated. And then when these days he works in 3 different prisons, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, there was a time when he was working at 5. But then when he's not at the prison, he worked with people who have been released from incarceration through meditation and then also through correspondence. So he's very busy. He's very busy. But still he has time to come here. All right. So enough of that. So you're actually gonna I look at your PowerPoint presentation. You actually have a couple of slides to kind of give us an update on your work, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
Hmm.
okay, wonderful,
Okay,
wonderful. All right.
I'll start. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you,
please.
Danny. Good evening, everyone. Let me start. So this is, I want to share with you guys some pictures. Um, so this is a one group out of four in a prison called Ironwood State Prison, which is in Blythe, California, right in the desert. It's about 200 miles from my house. I go there once a month. And this is the group. This was last month on the third Friday. I drove there on Thursday, and I have 16 men coming to meditate with me from 9 to 2:30. And as you can see, the faces, 14 out of 16 are people of color. This is just so that you guys know. And again, I'm not being political. I'm trying to state the obvious that the mass incarceration massively affect the communities of people of color. And this year, the manager, he allowed his assistant to take some pictures with us. So you can see that we were sitting in one of the classrooms. And the chairs are very, very uncomfortable, just so you guys know. I was also approved to bring in sandwiches from Albertson. I ordered two big trays, and they were gone, after after we finished meditating. And we actually meditate for almost 3 hours. We took 10-minute break in between just so that the guys can go to the bathroom or relax or release the tension in their body. I don't know much about yoga, so I didn't do any yoga. I show them how to do walking meditation as well. And this was the first time that they were able to sit still for almost 3 hours that day. And here another or two more pictures of them. I combine them, and this is how we meditate. So that's that group, and this month that was group A. The third weekend of this month, I'll go to group B, and then next month, July and August, it will be C and D. Now, I want to share with you one amazing story. Almost the Memorial Day weekend, the Saturday, I drove to Chowchilla to visit also a men's prison level 2 on Sunday. On the way there, I made a second stop at a Costco in Fresno. And I thought that, hey, I was going to stop at Starbucks, but then I might just get another matcha latte. That's my addiction. So I decided to go into Costco and use the restroom because the prison is about 252 miles from my house. So I walked in, and there were different ways to get through Costco, and I walked past by this lady. She was passing out those chips, I guess corn chips. So, and she stopped me. She said, "Hey, did you work in the prison?" I looked at her and I was like, "How the heck did you know?" But I said, "I volunteer." And she said, "Yeah, I was at the women's prison in Chino." I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah." And she said, "You made me meditate." I was like, I don't make people meditate. You guys come voluntarily, because I never ask or even invite people come voluntarily. Anyway, so, and she said I also wrote her a support letter for her release. I'm not sure if it had any impact. And I looked up my file and I wrote her a letter on July 2024. So it was barely 2 years ago. But she's in Fresno happily. She said she is very happy working at one of the vendors, for Costco. And that's the picture, and you can see how happy she looks. Anyway, so that was, what's the chance of meeting somebody that you used to work with, and out of in the middle of nowhere in America. So that was amazing to me, and actually I felt so touched that almost I kind of cried driving to the hotel. Anyways, a bit of review from last month. The topic was dealing with pleasure and pain, right? And usually, our issue is that we tend to crave for pleasure or pleasant feelings, and we reject or suppress negative or painful feelings. So the key is to, when you feel good, just be present with it and let it pass. Don't crave for more or don't want more, because that's your reaction. And if you have to deal with grief or any negative feeling, just be present with it. You don't have to suppress it or reject it or ask why. Because when we experience pain and if we are not mindful, then we continue to cause pain to us. And that's why the Buddha gave this talk on the sutta of two arrows. But when someone with mindfulness training, with learning, then when they are struck with an arrow or with pain, they are present with it. They are not causing more pain to themselves. So that was last month. And so for tonight's talk is about clinging to the six senses. I want to start with this one Dharma talk that I used to listen from a Vietnamese Buddhist nun. She passed away a few years ago. But this was in one of the suttas. I haven't had the time to find it, but I think it has everything to do with us clinging to our senses, six senses. So she said, in a village, there was this wealthy owner. He was heading out of town, so he told his employee or servant that, hey, keep an eye on the doors. Meaning, but it's not about keeping an eye. It's just that you have to be a security guard. But he took it as though just watch the doors. So there was a concert in the village, and he had to go. So what he did was he took down all six doors and grabbed them with him to watch the concert. So when the wealthy owner came home, everything was, of course, stolen with the doors, wide open. And the owner asked him, and he, what happened? He said, "Oh well, you told me to keep an eye on the door, and I had to go to watch a concert, so I took the doors with me, and that's how I keep an eye on the doors." So the moral of the story is that, we are constantly bombarded with our senses with data, information, and we are not even aware of it. Our senses are wide open, and we don't even have time to process the data that preoccupy in our senses. So that was the moral of the story. But I want to start a little bit with this sutta. It's called the Fire Sermon, which was mentioned in the book The Trauma of Everyday Life by Mark Epstein. So basically, what the Buddha said was, to 1,000 Buddhist monks at Gaya, that what is burning, the eye is burning, the visible forms are burning, our eye consciousness is burning. And, because we feel pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, is all burning. But burning with what? With the fire of lust, basically greed, hate, and delusion. And even though we are aging, we are dealing with death, we are dealing with sorrow, with pain and despair continuously. And that's what we are bombarded with on a regular basis. So a bit, I put this together, our eyes, right, is corresponding with our with our visual, no, our ears. So that was the eye. So our ears corresponding with our auditory consciousness, the sounds are burning. Our nose with olfactory consciousness, with the odors. And that's how we smell. Our tongue and gustatory consciousness with flavors. Our body with tactile, meaning touching anything that we can touch on. We are constantly lost in this sort of context. And our mind as well is constantly thinking this and that along with our mind or mental consciousness with mental objects. And our six senses are the basis for contact that leads to feeling, that leads to craving, and then also becoming, But here, we're just dealing with how we are clinging or craving for pleasure. So at the time, also in this chapter, Mark Epstein also brought up Kassapa, who was the fire worshipper chief. He was, before he met the Buddha, he was the head of this cult worshipping fire. And basically the fires here implies the manifestation of suffering and clinging to our six senses, and motivated or consumed by greed, hatred, and ignorance. And that continue to lead us in this cycle of samsara, right? Birth, aging, sickness, and death, and we don't even know it, which is basically part of the First Noble Truth that I think I gave a talk probably a couple years ago. And Mark Epstein explains that it is burning because our senses are burning because of how fleeting it is, and in terms of our contact, and we don't like to admit it because of how we cling to our own greed, anger, and egocentric preoccupations. Again, he said, I found this article on Buddhist Door about the fire sermon as well from David Holmes. And he basically said, craving is like a fire that burns everything with which it comes into contact with. If we are mindful of our feeling at the moment of the sense contact before feeling, before we cling or crave for more feeling, we can break that link. And, usually because our mind takes delight in them, our mind pursues them and clings to them constantly. And without an awareness, without mindfulness, we cannot become aware of the danger that lies dormant therein. And craving and attachment to the sense objects is the problem that we need to overcome. So here I pose some questions for you guys out there to contemplate on a regular basis. Which of your six senses you are constantly feeding, right? Your mind, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, your body. Let's say, and it could be related to addictions that we probably don't like to admit to it. Let's say the phone, the internet. We could sit there doom scrolling all day long or even for hours. And in a sense, that's an addiction. We consume, if some of the folks could be having issue with substance use, such as alcohol or drug or heroin, fentanyl, all of that stuff, or even porn. And my suggestion or advice to folks out there who watch porns, especially if you have kids around, you have to be extra careful. Don't let the kids watch them, because if they're exposed to them, they could do a lot of harm to themselves and others. Because I work with a lot of sexual offenders inside the prison, and it was because they were exposed to porn. Also, well, before that, they were sexually abused, molested, or raped, be it men or women. The other thing is, we could be addicted to news about politics, our identification with a political party. Especially for the past 10 years, politics can be very, very toxic. I have so many friends who hooked to the news, but at the same time, they're upset by it, and they kept posting news on their social media, which actually they spread the negativity all over. And I don't do that at all, because especially for me as a monk, I need to be mindful of what I consume. So for a lot of you out there, you just want to be cautious of what you are sharing. It's good to share positive info or news, or positive psychology. And the things that, okay, so back to here, in terms of feeding your senses, are you motivated by greed or hatred or ignorance, right? And take some time to reflect on that, so that, let's say, um, anger, right? We could be angry and we could be consuming substance, so that we could deal with it. And a lot of these three poisons, in Buddhism, it could be due to trauma, it could be due to stress, or it could be even due to boredom. Let's say someone sitting there scrolling uh, their cell phone. And the thing to remember to think is that, how does it affect your life, your personal relationships, your finance, your work? And also, how does it affect your physical, emotional, and mental health? These are the questions that I pose, that I ask that you be honest with yourself and see how you can manage, or, so that you can maintain a healthy mind, a healthy body, and also maintain your emotional health. And so how do you do that, right? By basically you reflect on your life, and whether or not the things that you do on a regular basis, is it motivated by greed or hatred or ignorance? Sometimes we do things that we don't even know why we did it. And by reflecting on that, and also on your motivation or intention, you'll be able to figure out what you are suffering from: childhood trauma, or stress from work or relationship. That is the source of your stress, or the source of your clinging to the senses. And the other thing is the mindfulness meditation or practices on a regular basis, to help your mind settle, so that you can have a clear mind, you can maintain your mental clarity. And also reflect on your actions, your speech, and your thoughts, and write them down. Talk to a therapist, or talk to a confidant, so that they can have a different perspective and help you sort out the issues that you may have. If you have a spiritual teacher, you can also reach out to them. When you do all of this, you'll be able to find out what you are feeling, and also what the issues are, and what your intentions are. And then at the end of the sutta, that the Buddha said, the path to liberation, to not clinging, and to not be burned by the fires is to develop detachment by recognizing that our sensory experiences are constantly changing or impermanent, and that they do not bring lasting satisfaction, meaning that they are causing dukkha. Then you can learn to become disenchanted with it. When you become disenchanted, then it leads to this passion that cut off this feel, this desire to continue to feed your senses with data, and that leads to liberation and enlightenment. And what is enlightenment, or what is nirvana or nibbana? Is basically, it means the absence of greed, the absence of hatred, the absence of ignorance. Basically, is that the fire ceased to burn. The thing is, there's no one that put out the fire. That's the key. It's just that when the conditions are right, naturally, um, in your mind, or especially your conscious mind, there's this absence of hatred, greed, and ignorance. And that, in a sense, liberation. It also basically it means the absence of greed, hatred, and delusion. So how do you get to that? And the one thing that Mark Epstein said is to deal for us is the first step is to deal with the fear that we harbor, the traumatic nature of things, like when things happen to us, car accident, grief, loss from loss, or stress from intimate relationships. And that the thing is, when we become fearful, then we either ignore the flames that are burning us, and that we hope that it would disappear. But the thing is, it's not easy to get rid of them altogether. And the flames can only go out when we stop pretending that they are not there. But the sutra actually implies that means that we become liberated. And the thing is, in the sutta, it implies that nirvana is a place to be achieved, but it's not. The other term that he brought up is nirviti or nibbuti. It describes, how the world appears to you when your wisdom eye is open. Richard Gambridge said this: when the fires of passion, hatred, and delusion died out within one experiences bliss. So when everything is burning, and not only with impermanence and pain, but also with bliss. So from one vision, it leads to the knowledge of the other. When you know that this is burning and you allow it to cease, then you experience bliss. And also, the way that the Buddha discussed the burning is pretty much similar to what psychotherapists in modern time also found. And here, Mark Epstein, he was trying to describe the blissful nature of reality that is also part of our painful experience, that everything is burning. And he used to use the phrase, and actually in the Buddhist world, we tend to say nirvana is samsara is nirvana, to describe our experience. And because that's the everyday conventional suffering driven by our egocentric preoccupation. So basically, keep in mind, nirvana is not a separate place that we can go to when we eliminate what we don't like about ourselves. Nirvana is there, is in your mind, is hidden behind your like and dislike in your everyday activity. So the key to remember is in your daily meditation, um, at the end of it, see if there's any absence of greed or hatred or delusion, even for a few seconds in your conscious mind. The other thing that he said, because his book deals with childhood trauma, which actually 60% of Americans suffer from, according to the CDC. Traumatic experience does not have to be pathology. The problem is the absence of adequate attunement and responsiveness to the child's painful emotional reactions that led them to think that these experiences are unendurable. And that is the source of our traumatic experiences and psychopathology. So basically, the Buddha said, why is it burning? Why is it our senses of our feelings are fleeting? Is because it's impermanent, and that is actually one of the three marks of existence in our world, right? So what you want to do is create a situation or an atmosphere of attunement and responsiveness within yourself, one that can mimic the mental emotional state of a parent, so that you can tend to this pain. And when it releases, then we can also be released of our traumatic experiences. And Mark Epstein said this sort of phenomenon plays out every day in our daily experience. No matter how hard we try to make a world that is rational, predictable, things can still go wrong. And the thing is, we humans, we don't like anything that is unpredictable or uncertain. That's the thing that we have to deal with. So basically, he said, when the Buddha taught the fire sermon, he tried pointing out that when we resist any traumatic nature of things, we cut off ourselves from the experience. We also cut off others. So we need to be mindful of any stressful or traumatic experiences, so that we know how to be present, how to deal with it, how to tend to our pain. How to attune and respond. And then, when you're able to do that, you can also help others. So a bit on attunement and responsiveness. Basically, attunement is giving complete non-judgmental, responsive attention to another person through eye contact, verbal, and other non-verbal forms of attention. And that's how parents are tending to their child. This implies to the relationship between a parent, especially a mother and the child. And when that happens, the child will have this healthy attachment. Without it, the child suffers from developmental trauma. But it also applies to the relationship between a therapist and the client. In order for the client to feel safe, to develop the ability to co-regulate and self-regulate their own negative emotions. And with self-regulation, you'll be able to attune and respond to your own negative emotion and traumatic experiences. Otherwise, you will suffer developmental trauma. So one thing, lastly, one thing that he also brought up is everything is already broken. He brought up a story that he heard from Ajahn Chah. Basically, Ajahn Chah in this talk showed the audience a glass, a cup that is made of glass, and he basically said, I love this glass. It holds water. When the sun shines on it, it reflects beautifully. And he loves it. However, if he is not careful, he could knock it up and break the glass. So in a sense, the glass is already broken. And when you understand that, then every minute that you spend with the glass is precious. Meaning, you can apply this analogy to your relationship with your family, with your spouse, with your friends. And what this is it implies, impermanence of things, right? We are born, we are subject to aging and sickness and eventually death. And with impermanence, it implies this inherent, this lack of inherent existence, which is actually not self. So basically, all of us human, we don't have this eternal essence, no spirit that was one with God, no immortal soul that survives death, and no sacred fire that must be tended. Even consciousness cannot be shown to exist independently. Nothing exists in its own right or under its own power. Again, back to infants, right? We growing up, we might struggle with the trauma of aloneness or loneliness. Even with everything that is contingent, relative, and relational, we have this abject seeking instinct, desire a security that we assume is our birthright, but that's not the world that we live in. So when we cling to a notion of permanence and not self, then, but that never exists in the first place. We cling to a glass that is already broken. So in conclusion, be it trauma, disillusionment, daily trauma, stressed, some people manage to overcome, some don't, and it could lead people to feel alone in this planet. And the thing is, we keep busy clinging to our senses, motivated by our own greed, hatred, and ignorance. But we can rise above it. And if we look deeply, everything is impermanent. Everything is not self, meaning lacks of inherent existence. And everything is suffering. And that is the three marks of existence. And the one thing before we meditate is that I thought about this yesterday. When we spend time studying and meditating, we actually invest time and energy in our mental health. So keep in mind, because we use the term investment in mostly in finance, in stock market, but in terms of spirituality, I think we can also use the term investment as well. We invest time and energy in studying, in meditating. The first thing is it improves our mental health, and especially for the Buddhist, you want to enter nirvana, so invest more time and energy. With that, I will conclude this and lead you guys to a short meditation. So let's take your posture. And let's take some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Tell yourself to relax. Let go of your thoughts, thinking, planning, fear, worry. Let go of everything that you encountered since this morning, this past week, past month. If you can let it all go. This is one way to clear your mind. Tell yourself that you are safe, and tell your brain that you are safe, so that your brain does not have to be in hypervigilant mode. Once you are done, then breathe normally. through your nose. Check your posture. Feel the contact between your posture and the surface that you are sitting on or standing on. Start with a smile. Notice how you feel when you smile and how that feeling gives rise to the physiological sensations in your body. Then notice that your feeling and the sensations are fading away, disappearing. Then see what you feel next. Let's continue with the sense door practice. First, notice your environment, the room that you are in, and notice the space surrounding your body. Even with your eyes closed, you may be able to sense a couple inches away surrounding your body. And use your body to feel the room temperature, but not your mind chatter to make any statements. Using your awareness or your mindfulness, let's check in with your mind and see how busy it is or clear. Is it wandering to other places? Your feeling, your emotion, your mood, your attitude. Notice what you can hear in each moment. Whether you are reacting to it, meaning turning around, or letting it be. Your sense of seeing, smell, and taste. These three senses during meditation are not active, since there isn't anything to trigger them. Then your sense of touch in the body. Feel how the clothes that you wear feel on your body, and any tension or tightness throughout your body. Your body may feel hot. You don't have to go and turn on the AC. Just notice the warm or the heat, the warm sensation. That's mindfulness. The sensual practice helps you to stay grounded and centered, that you can do it anywhere, anytime. So you don't get distracted easily or feel overwhelmed when you're being triggered. Let's bring your awareness to your breath. Let's breathe for a couple minutes to relax your body and calm your nervous system. Just breathe in, breathe out. When you feel angry or sad, it triggers the sympathetic nervous system that actually negatively affects most of your internal organs. But when you take the time to just breathe, whether you are sitting or standing, it will trigger the parasympathetic nervous system that regulates most of your internal organs. Bring your body to a state of resting, peaceful flow. And you can do that a few times a day. To heal most of your internal organs. If your mind is agitated, you can say peace when you breathe in, stressed when you breathe out, or whatever description that works for you. Let's continue to stay with the breath, with your breath. Let's use this time to process the thoughts in your conscious mind on a daily basis. We have some 50,000 thoughts a day. And a lot of these thoughts are not useful. Some could even be harmful. And they add up when you don't spend time getting rid of them. So let's take this time and unload and get rid of negative thoughts and useless thoughts. Remember to relax. You notice that your thoughts are flowing like a river. It's continuing non-stop. You'll be able to recognize one thought at a time. And with your mindfulness, you know what to do. So first, see if there's any negative self-talk that come from your default mode network. I hate myself, I'm mad at myself, or I don't like my look. Any negativity about yourself, flush them out. And promise yourself not to repeat them. If you have a negative view of certain people, let that go as well. Because that adds negativity to your mind, to your brain. If anyone did or said anything to you that was hurtful, let that go. Let go of that person as well. If there's any fear or worry, let it go. Don't waste time and mental energy worrying about somebody or being afraid of something. Fear of the unknown, fear of uncertainty leads to anxiety. So try your best to let it go. Images of your loved ones, if they appear, put them aside. They will always be in your conscious mind. You don't have to engage with them at the moment. And put aside all your planning. And see if there's any craving for pleasure through your senses. Seeing beautiful things or people, nice music, food, smell, touch, or constantly thinking about somebody. This I consider craving. Or clinging to someone that you can't let go, or relationship. Just notice that craving and clinging could negatively affect your physical and mental health. And see if there's any anger or sadness from years or decades ago that still lingers in the back of your mind. See if you can take some time to investigate so that you know why, and then perhaps you could let it go. And this is how you purify your mind, just as you clean your house, your room, your bed. You maintain personal hygiene in your body. You do the same thing for your conscious mind. Visualize that your conscious mind is your mental home. That right now you are standing at the center of your mental home. You get rid of everything that you don't care for, that makes you feel uncomfortable. Flush them out. The more thoughts you let go, the stronger is your mindfulness or self-awareness. And the more space you have in your conscious mind. Then notice how you feel right now when your mind is clear. Most of the thoughts are gone. Is there an absence of anger? Absence of greed? Absence of delusion? Let's sit still for a couple minutes in silence. Let's check in with your mind and see how it is. Perhaps spaces, clear. Your feeling, your emotion, your mood, your attitude. And notice the qualities of mindfulness, concentration, patience. that you just cultivated. Before I hand it over to Danny, I want to show you guys. I haven't talked about this image. It's about our nervous system. Just know that when we get angry constantly, it will, long term, we will get terminal illness or some form of cancer. I have witnessed so many people inside the prison and also people out here in their 60s or 70. A lady, she was a vegan, but she had lung intestine cancer, and it kept coming. It came back 4 times, and it was because of stress, chronic stress from family members. But if you are able to take a break, well, you should have time. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to force my view on you guys, but on a daily basis, a few times a day, take a break, breathe for a few minutes. It will trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, and it will relax your body. It will calm your nervous system and re-energize and heal most of your internal organs. I have seen so many, so that's why I have been using this image inside the prison to let people know, because they suffer, not only that they suffer from trauma, but they're constantly getting angry and agitated. With that, thank you. With that, I hand it over to Danny.
Thank you. Thank you for spending time with us. So the thing that I want to talk about is when you say that meditating is investment. It's investment for our mental and emotional health. But before that, the diagram that you show that talks about our autonomous nerve system, the sympathetic is what we normally call fight or flight, and then the parasympathetic is what we normally call rest and digest. Now, the Chinese actually, for many thousands of years, understand that, although they don't use the same wording, but they do understand that there's something called yang, which is the influence of the sun, and then something called yin, which is the influence of the absence of the sun. And what they're describing is actually our evolution. So when we knew how to use a thumb and able to break a tree branch in order to use it as a defensive weapon, we walked down from the tree. We departed from the other inmates in our evolution, and we started to find safety in a cave where there's no sunlight. The only time that we get out of the cave and be under the sun is when we are either chasing animal for food or being chased by animal. And so our evolution evolved from that. And so when we're under the sun, what the Chinese call yang, then we enter into the sympathetic mode, or what we now call the fight or flight. And when we return back to the cave away from the sun, then we enter into the parasympathetic mode, what we call the rest and digest. Now, one of the things that happens when you're under the sun, when you're in danger, is that your body optimizes. It puts out a lot of stress hormone, adrenal, cortisol, and then all the others, and to get you prepared for the fight of your life. And it turns off all the stuff that you don't need at the moment, your immunity, your digestions, your reproduction. One of the stress hormone that it puts out is, I just mentioned cortisol, which is a natural form of steroid. And as you all know, we sometimes inject steroid into our body because of inflammation. And so cortisol is a natural way of our body protecting us from inflammation when we're under stress. The problem is that if you have too much in your body, if you are under stress 24/7, then your body develops becomes insensitive to the cortisol. So it's just like too much of a good thing. It's like someone rings your bell and you just keep ringing, and then finally you say, "Forget it, I'm not answering the door." All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but up until about maybe 80 years ago, that hasn't been a problem. It's been a problem first from electrification and then eventually internet. Is that we don't live according to the sun anymore. And so we are under stress all the time, right? Also, 80 years ago when I was a child, nobody exercised except the athletes. But here, people want to go out and exercise. Well, your body doesn't understand that. You're outgrowing evolution. So when you go and you do these very energetic exercise, you're putting out stress hormones, you feel good, but the body thinks that you're being chased by animals, and so it goes into the fight or flight. And if that's all you do and you don't know how to bring yourself back into the rest and digest, then your body basically loses its own self-healing power.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why all the disease that we see these days are from inflammation, chronic inflammation, whether it is dementia, it's high blood pressure, it's diabetes, it's autoimmune disease, all of that, everything you can name. It's basically chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is because we no longer have the ability to heal ourselves. And the reason that we cannot heal ourselves is because we are in fight or flight. We're in. So I absolutely agree with you that to meditate, to come back and meditate, is an investment for health.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually returning us to the way that we have evolved. Maybe a couple hundred years later, we're not. Our body has evolved to a point where it knows how to deal with inflammation without relying on your own cortisol, but not yet, not yet. And so, the problem we have is that we're outgrowing our evolution. And that's why you have all these disease. So, but I think the word investment is a very, very good word.
Yeah.
It really
For
is because
rebirth
you're.
too, right? And nirvana.
Uh,
For
Yeah, it's
nirvana.
a very good
Mm-hmm.
word. But I think there's another word that we also use is called empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
Empowerment in the sense that you empower yourself so that you can make your own choice. And so when we talk about working in the prison, and I think last week when we were in our Cantonese class, you mentioned that a lot of your colleagues, a lot of your fellow monks are object to what you do. They don't believe that these people deserve your compassion and your loving kindness, which is kind of silly because Buddha never never had a problem helping those who doesn't deserve his compassion and loving kindness,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, but on the other hand, we're not there to say that these people don't deserve to be there, even though when we look around, it's an inverse proportion. I mean, almost 80-90% of the people we see are people of color, and but what they do have in common with the other 20%, those who are white, is that they're all very poor. So it's not that they don't deserve the time because they did commit the crime, but there's a certain amount of injustice there because had they had right representation, had they were they able to afford representation, they wouldn't have been there. Lots of
Mm-hmm.
people committed crime and never had to spend the kind of time. I mean, there are people who, and especially looking back at the time when we had, three strikes and out. I mean, there are stories of the guy who actually stole potato chips
Yeah.
one time, but because he stole 3 bags, they were considered suffer, and he was serving 25 to life. And that was a crazy time. So a
Yeah.
lot of people are there. But But having said that, but we're not there. We're really not there to relieve them from their physical incarceration, right? We have no power to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We have no power to do that. But on the other hand, they're suffering more than just the physical incarceration. They're suffering from their emotional and the mental and the spiritual incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things that we do know is that prison is a very violent place, very, very violent. I mean, you talk about sometimes you come home and you say, well, I just drove 3.5 hours there, and turns out that they shut down the place because someone just got killed,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then they shut down the place. They don't tell you. You know, you show up at the
Yep.
gate and they say, no, you can't come in, right? And then now you have to drive 3.5 hours back. It's a very violent place. Um, but the violence is actually their defense mechanism. There's a lot of insecurity,
Correct.
and they express their insecurity, they protect themselves with violence. And the violence is not just how they express themselves, it's in the mind. And so they are not only incarcerated physically, they're incarcerated in the mind. And all
Mentally.
Venerable De Hong is trying to do is to provide some relief,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's not just that they need to invest in their emotional health, is that we really want them to
Yeah.
empower themselves so that,
Mm-hmm.
yes, they cannot make any more choices in terms of the physicality, you know, until they get parole or not.
Mm-hmm.
But every second that they're in there, you know, we can give them the faculty to allow them to, you know, free themselves from their spiritual incarceration. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember 10 years ago, um, I was in China with my Dharma master. And, you know, in China, they have secret police. Secret police comes to our Dharma hall every day, you know, a couple times a day, just to make sure that, you know, we're doing what we're supposed to do and not plotting to overthrow the government. But anyway, people are very, you know, they're accustomed to that. So they're very careful about what they say and all that. But, you know, at night, inside a room, then they feel more free. And so one day he said, well, Danny, we don't have much freedom here, you know. I said, no, that's not true. You know, last time I was here was when I was 12 years old. And, you know, now this is 10 years ago. So now, you know, 50 years later, it's a tremendous change. You know, China has seen tremendous change. So I said, like, when I go to your grocery store, oh, you know, I see so much selection, even more than what we have in US. So I think you do have freedom because you're able to make choices. But your freedom is material freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm? So freedom is about choice. So if you could choose materially, then one would argue that you do have freedom, but it's a material freedom. But perhaps what we're talking about is intellectual freedom. No, you don't have that yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time I was interviewing a Buddhist nun, and she was very smart. She was actually a scientist, a PhD in science. And I said, I like to, you know, I was doing a bunch of interview with all the students there. I wanted to know how they come to this place, how they learn Buddhism and all that. And so I wanted to interview this nun that I respect. And I said, and she said, well, I would agree to the interview if you let me interview you afterwards. I said, okay, all right. So I interviewed her, and then she took the mic and said, now, let me do the same to you. He says, how come you are interested in Buddhism? And I said exactly just that. You know, I was 10 years old. I was 60 years old and had already retired for 10 years. I finished my you know, I did everything that I wanted to do. I went to college. I went to graduate school. I became a professor, and I became a scientist. And then I decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I built two companies, and I, you know, retired. So I said to her, I said, well, my whole life is about empowering myself so I can make free choices on my own, right? And you did the same, you did the same. You were living you grew up in Vietnam. You were abused by your father, and every night you ask, why me, right? When do I get to choose? Right? Right? Why do I have to do this? And then eventually you find yourself in a boat with 200 other inmates. I mean, not inmates, but refugees with your younger brother. And you know, you actually said that you wanted to die. Maybe that was your only free choice back then, right? I mean, you really said like,
Yeah.
no, I can't go through this anymore. You know, and I mean, it's all about choices. We just want to make choice. We just want to choose, right? And then you came and you got your degree and you got your job, and then you got your families over here. They were living the American dream, which you felt that they deserved since you had the chance. And once all that is done, then I said to the nun, but now I want to have spiritual freedom. I wanted to move beyond, freedom in material wealth. You know, I'm to a point now where I could live the way I want to live, make choices that I want to make from a material standpoint. But now it's time for me to make, spiritual choices. And I think that what you're talking about is really the teaching from the historical Buddha of how to make spiritual, emotional, and mental choices, and how to be aware of the expectation and the conditioning that is imposed on us, not just by televisions and politicians and media, social medias and friends and all that, but also by ourselves, by our senses. Our eyes deceive us, our ear deceive us, right? Um, so you didn't quite talk about the what we call the hindrances, but clinging is
Mhm.
one of the hindrances.
Yeah.
To me, the hindrances is like the black cloud that is covering the sun, right? And Buddhist teaching fundamentally says that we are capable of that sweetness, that brightness inside of us,
Mhm.
right? So when we do yoga and people would say, namaste. Namaste is may my light meet your light. We're talking about
Mhm.
something deep inside, right? So someone says, I don't know why he said that. He says, "I'm here, and can we all be friends?" And I say, "Absolutely, you're in the right place. We're learning how to be friends with our inner self right now. Let's be friends,
Yeah.
right? We want to get deep inside of us and understanding that all that emotions and all that clinging and aversion and all that fundamentally came from our senses being at distracted by the outside, be it distracted by people. We can undo all that. We can empower ourselves, and by investing in ourselves.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay,
Right.
I ran the risk of speaking as much as you do. All right, so okay, someone says, who is your guest? My guest is Venerable De Hong, Dehong. Now, that's actually a pronunciation in Vietnamese. The meaning of his name in Sanskrit is Kusala. And translating back to English, it means wholesomeness. Wholesomeness. So these are the choices that we can make. Every thought that we can have can be either wholesome or unwholesome,
Yep.
kusala or akusala, right? So in the Buddhist teaching is not so much between good and evil. It's really not
Okay.
that. It's
Mhm.
really between what's wholesome and what's unwholesome. It's very individual.
Mhm.
You're not playing to some deity, playing to someone else. You're playing to yourself. It's whatever you're making a choice. Every thought that you have can be either wholesome to you. That would be like compassion, loving kindness, empathy, equanimity. There's a short list of that, or it can be unwholesome.
Hmm.
right? A kusala. And, anger and clinging and depression and anxiety and jealousy, and those we would consider those to be unwholesome, right?
Hmm.
So Venerable De Hong is the wholesome guy.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. There was one more question. Somewhere in there you mentioned a book. Do you
Yeah.
remember that? Yeah,
Yeah,
can you repeat that? Yeah.
the trauma of everyday life.
The trauma of everyday life.
Yeah. Hmm.
And who is the author?
Mark Epstein,
Okay.
Mark, yeah,
Yeah.
Epstein.
Okay. All right. Everybody got that, right? Okay. So I am going to, if unless there's more comments and questions, but if you think of any afterwards, you can post it as comments, and I'll make sure if anybody home gets it. Okay. Now, as it turns out, as it turns out, next time we talk about this. Next time,
Yeah.
instead of being the first week of July, it will be the last week of June.
No, the fourth week of June,
Well,
because we have
last week.
five
That's what I
Tuesdays.
said.
No, we have 5 Tuesdays in June. You'll be out of
Uh,
town the last week of June, I
hang
believe.
on, hang on. Well, you know more than I do then.
I think so.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so the next time we meet, next time we have an English class would be in 1, 2, 3 weeks, 23rd.
Yeah, 23rd. Yeah, yeah.
23rd. And the reason I want that, as opposed to bouncing it off to July, is that I think people are anxious to hear from you.
Okay.
We're addicted to your teaching. We cling to your wholesomeness. Okay. Let's
Yeah.
see. There was one comment I missed that. It's from Tess, and she said, "Mind is clean, but
Hmm.
I have a big bundle of despair, grief in my heart space."
Hmm.
Uh, um,
It's heavy.
it's very heavy, yeah. But
Yeah,
let me.
agree.
First of all, I don't want to judge, and I don't want to make light of your comment, Tess. But very often, when we talk about pain, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, and I'm talking about myself now. I'm talking about myself, that when I feel pain, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, it's really more about the memory of pain. You know, I talk a great deal about my father who
Hmm.
passed away 4 years ago. I feel the pain, obviously, but when I think about that, I'm really revisiting the memory of that pain. And again, I'm not. So forgive me if I sound like I'm making light of your comment. I'm not. I am not, and I don't judge.
Hmm.
But I'm just saying that in my own journey, I when I feel pain, I remind myself that it is just the memory of pain, and if I cling to it, it becomes suffering.
Um, yeah, with grief, the things that in therapy they said that with with grief, because you have this much love that has nowhere to go to offer because your loved one's gone. That's what they say in therapy. We grieve because
Ye-
we have all this much love, but it has nowhere to go.
Yeah,
That's grief.
yeah,
Hmm.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
Find someone else to love.
yeah. Well, it takes time, so hopefully,
How do
see,
you deal with your grief? How do you deal with your grief? Your grief was, I mean, we talk about grief. We can talk about grief when your parents passed away, but
Mhm.
there was actually much more than that, right? I mean, your grief is really like you're thinking about yourself, how unfortunate I am. The anger is more anger than grief,
Well,
right?
yeah, well, when my dad passed away in 1999, it was hard. It was grief, but with all the anger, that needed a way out, because all the injustice that I felt at the time. But it took me a few years to process all of that. But with my mom, the luckily, I guess, that I became a monk, so death is part of my daily practice, right? That each one of us is subject to death. No one could escape it. And when she was diagnosed with cancer in January of 2015, so with bladder cancer, so we took turn. My siblings took turn taking care of her. I was living with her with my younger brother. So we have like 2 years with her, and then she was diagnosed. She was told that the doctor told us, we didn't tell her, that she in 2016, a year later, that she only had 6 months to go. So we didn't tell her. We went and bought we did everything, get everything set up for her, but she lives for 3 more years through gardening, and she kept busy from 9 to 5. And so we had that much time with her. So in a sense, it was kind of prepare us for her departure, for her transition.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it was hard, but it was not as hard or devastated as I would feel. There was a bit of the first year. It has been 6 years now, or seven actually. And the first year, I felt this emptiness in my mind and my body. So that was the one thing. So that's how I felt at the time. But I still miss her. But grief is a lifelong process. But we have to be able to figure out how to manage that. Seeing a therapist. That's one of the things that we need to do. We need to do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, this kind of brings up an interesting point that we had talked about before, which is that um, I believe the Buddhist teaching has just landed in America, even though it's been around for a while, because up until now, and I talked about this before, that's the Buddhism that we see in the West is either what I call immigrant Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
that they're here to serve the immigrants. So the Thais brought into Thai Buddhism, the Chinese brought into Chinese Buddhism, the Tibetan put into Tibetanism. Is mainly there to serve the immigrants. And then you have the other side, which I call the fast food Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we turn Buddhist teaching, into therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But that was not really Buddha's original teaching. Now, we talk about kusala, being wholesome and being unwholesome. And you would have to ask the question, why is it so important to be wholesome and not to be unwholesome? Because Buddhist teaching is really more about karma. Now, karma, the best I can explain karma is with the with what Stephen Hawkins to his have proposed, which is that before him it was Einstein, and Einstein proposed the duality that you could have material and energy, and they're interchangeable. And so E equal mc squared is basically that, and that is the basis for the Big Bang, which created the universe, as well as our nuclear weapon, our nuclear energy. It's really the conversion between energy into matter or matter into energy. So Stephen Hawkins, he said that that cannot be true 100%. Because if two persons were to jump into a black hole, and if there's just energy and matter, then they're interchangeable. And that's just it can be. And so he proposed something called the Hawkins radiation, which says that even if our material existence and our energy's existence become one, there is something left behind that distinguishes us. And that's the closest I can say about karma.
Mm-hmm.
That is, for every mental relation, it leaves a record. So if you have a wholesome mental relation, it leaves a wholesome record. If you have a unwholesome, it leaves an unwholesome record. Now that record actually contribute to your next mental action. It's like the tomato. I always use that example. I'll give you a tomato seed. You plant the tomato seeds, you grow tomato. You have to put in a lot of effort to actually go in from a seed into a tomato. But the tomato leaves behind a lot more seeds, and that's like our karma. So our practice is really about how we want to make that choice of not suffering from a karma, at least not suffering from an unwholesome karma.
Mm-hmm.
So that's taking it way, way beyond Buddhism, meditation, mindfulness as a therapy. And you might say, well, that becomes religion, doesn't it? Well, it depends on the definition of religion. Because if religion means that you believe in a higher power, that your destiny is already predetermined, no, then Buddhism is not a religion.
Mm-hmm.
Because you yourself determines your destiny by practicing and by avoiding unwholesome actions
Mm-hmm.
and engaging in wholesome action with the thought that you will leave behind wholesome karma. And that's how you elevate yourself. Now, coming back to grief, this is how I deal with it. That, yes, my father has passed away because every atom in his body has to be returned. You know, this body that we have is borrowed. It's like borrowing a book from the library. Some of us abuse that book. Some of us actually take care of that book, you know, returning it better than we found it. But still, that book has to be returned. So if you call that death, well, that is the death of that physical existence. But I believe that there is something else. I believe that if a person is a wholesome person, he leaves behind wholesome energy. I focus on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I focus on the energy that my dad left behind. I believe that he did his best to be a wholesome person. Right? That's how I deal with it. Now, if that becomes religion, well, so be it. At least it's not fast food.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, enough of
Okay.
that. It's
Thank you.
7:30. Thank you so much. You had a whole day. You had a busy day. You were
Yeah.
in Lancaster, which is hour and a half drive. You
Mm-hmm.
visited
Two
two
groups.
yard,
Mm-hmm.
two groups. You had a busy day. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming here and spending
Sure.
time with us. So I'll see you back at least in the English class on the 23rd. I'll
Yeah.
see you next Tuesday for the Cantonese class. Okay.
All right. Next
Thank
week.
you so much. Thank you for all your work. Thank you
Thank you.
for bringing loving kindness to those who need it. Let me turn off
Thank you.
the outside first, one at a time.